Nice to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's lovely to join you all the way from the UK.
Thank you, brother.
Now you can call me Mike.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for joining us today.
That's okay.
So over to you now.
Thank you very much. And a very warm welcome to everybody. And thank you very much, first of all, for tuning in. And I think this is a topic which is close to everybody's heart. Jabin, I think you probably need to mute yourself, otherwise your screen will keep kind of coming up, I think. You know, that sit very still. It's good. So I think this is a topic that's close to everybody's heart, and maybe the true introduction of me in the context of the topic is probably an appropriate place to start. And it all began for me about 35 years ago when I woke up one day and realized I just wasn't enjoying the journey, and my relationships were certainly not working as well as they could. I was very stressed out and kind of couldn't see any meaning to life. There was no depth. Everyone seemed to be very superficial around me. So I kind of got to the point, kind of hit my brick wall, if you like, and gave up everything I was doing and went to look outside and inside to see what I have to change in my life. And it wasn't long before I realized the big hole in all our education, the thing that's missing for just about everyone in every culture in the world. And this is something called self-understanding. No one teaches us how to understand ourselves. In other words, how we work at the level of our consciousness. You know, how we think, what to think, how we feel, and how feelings arise, and what beliefs and perceptions, how important they are in our life. So I kind of realized that if I don't understand me, then I can't manage me. You know, and if I can't manage my energies, and if I can't manage my energies, my thoughts, my feelings, my attitudes, then I find it difficult to manage the stuff around me. You know, what I sometimes call the 4 R's: responsibilities, relationships, roles, and resources, my energy, basically. So I kind of went back to school and not academic school, not like as a child, but the real school in life. I went back to the real school, the true school. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the true school. Some people say life is the school, and I guess they're kind of close. But for me, the real school is your consciousness, you know, because that's where everything begins. That's where everything happens first. It's where you do your thinking, it's where you make your decisions, have your vision, do your learning, do your unlearning. It all happens within our consciousness first. Everything you do begins with a thought, and subconsciously a belief. So this is the bit that no one teaches us, is how to see and understand the mechanisms and the processes on the inside. So I went back to school, and I've been in school ever since. And that's why I write books, really. I don't really write for other people. I kind of write for myself. A bit selfish. It's called proper selfishness. And the reason is that as I write, I get clearer in myself about what's going on within myself, my consciousness. Yeah, and of course, the first thing that you realize, first thing you learn, if you like, is that consciousness is what I am. Whether you call it soul or spirit, psyche, or just the I that says I am, consciousness is what I am. So when you look in the mirror in the morning, you know, the first mistake every day that we make, actually, that causes our stress and our suffering, is that when you look in the mirror, is that you believe you are what you see in the mirror. That's what we've been taught. In other words, that I'm just this form. I'm just the form. But consciousness is formless, if you like. and really, that's what's making all this work. It's the conscious self. So that's why I write. I kind of write to really understand the depth of that and the dimensions of that, the formlessness of myself. And to then understand the energies that I have at my disposal, my thoughts, my feelings, my attitudes, the things that I put into my relationships, that I invest in my relationships. So I've been doing that for 35 years, and I'll be doing that for the rest of my life. It's a kind of depthless self-inquiry, if you like, that finds its expression in many different forms. And in one form is me talking to you now. And unfortunately, we're still, well, maybe fortunately, actually, that we are screen to screen. Who would have thought 6 months later we'd still be kind of meeting across our technological toys? But it seems to be the way, and it seems to be the way that will still be happening in some months' time. So it's a pleasure to be here, and it's nice to connect with everyone over there. So I know you're far away, and yet the communication is so clear. So this particular area of exploration, another word for relationships really is life. Life is relationship. It's the context. The context of life is all our relationships, whether it's with other people, with the planet, with the animal kingdom, etc., is that it is where we find ourselves on every moment of every day. And that's why many people, if not most people, usually have some difficulty in the context of their relationships, of how they are relating to others. And that difficulty is different for different people at different times in their life, etc. So there's no one right solution. It really depends on what works for you. I think everyone ends up with what's called a difficult person in their life. Do you have a difficult person in your life, sometimes known as a DP? And you just have to walk in the room and you go, oh God, no, you're sorry, you get a nice smile, hello, how are you? But inside you're going, oh, it's that person again. And that's a sign that they're a difficult relationship for you. They're a difficult person for you. So a very simple definition of a difficult person is someone who does what you don't want them to do, and then who doesn't do what you do want them to do, and then you don't know what to do about them. It's very simple. Someone who doesn't do what you do want them to do, and who does what you don't want them to do, and then you don't know what to do about them. And so that might be a very simple definition. In other words, you don't know how to respond. You don't know how to react. You're projecting onto them some kind of pain or unrelaxedness or suffering or sorrow. Some emotional projection is the sign that they are a difficult relationship for you. Now, that emotional projection may not show up as behavior or even in your face. You may be very good at disguising it. And we become very good at disguising our feelings, if you like. And so it may just be on the inside. It may just be in your mind. It's very real. You're very unhappy inside with that person, but it's not expressed. And so in some relationships, we're very good at doing that. We've learned to do that over time. And who knows who taught us? Probably somebody bigger and older earlier on in our life has taught us how to do that. So what I'd like to do today is kind of give you a few ideas as to how to, if you like, make this relationship better, and different tools, different insights, different ideas, which might be useful for you to repair the relationship, if indeed the relationship requires some repair. And most difficult relationships do. They require a shift, a change in how I approach the relationship. So this is what I call the relationship repair kit. And I'm going to put some tools in your kit, and then you can take them away and play with them. So I'm probably going to mention about 10 different things that you can do. So if you have a bit of pen and paper, then feel free to jot them down, and then you can see which one might work for you best. Because every relationship's different. We are all different. Every day is different. Every moment is different. And sometimes some things will kind of work better than others, just like any tool in any toolbox. So the first tool is the most common behavior in our relationship with that difficult person is we're kind of either mentally or verbally blaming them for something. And it's usually for how I feel. In other words, it's this old understanding. And again, you might want to write this down. This is a nice phrase to repeat and to really go into the depth of this in your own self-inquiry. And this phrase goes like this: it's not what you say or do to me that makes me feel this way. It's what I do with what you say that makes me feel this way. So it's not what you say or do that makes me feel this way. It's what I do with what you say or do that makes me feel this way. Yeah, and so this is the idea that we're brilliant at making ourselves victims of other people. And so what we forget is that actually it's not them that's making me feel the way I'm feeling, it's me. It's my creation. It's because of my version of the other person that I've created in my consciousness. Yeah, and that version, I've decided, don't like it, don't approve. They shouldn't be doing this, they should be doing that. And so therefore I start to generate an emotion and I project it onto them as a form of blame. They are making me feel like this. It's like the first hurdle that we kind of all have to get over is this hurdle of realizing, self-realization, that it's me that's making me upset in my relationship with them. It's not them that's making me upset in my relationship with them. And every seminar, every course, and I work with organizations, I work with managers and leaders and of all levels in organizations. This is like the first hurdle everyone has to get over, because we've all learned the opposite. We've all learned to believe that it's them. Yeah, they're to blame. They're let me down. They haven't met whatever. And so we've learned that belief that other people, yeah, are the creators of how I think and feel. And technology doesn't help, because coming across every screen now are 1,000 lessons which are affirming that belief. Someone else. Get upset with someone else. Isn't it outrageous what they've done? Don't you feel the rage at them? And so we make ourselves brilliant victims. So this first tool in the toolbox is possibly the deepest. I start at the deep end of the swimming pool, as they say, is this realization that it's my version of them that I'm unhappy with, believing that they themselves are making me unhappy. Yeah. Tool number 2 is, again, it's a nice little phrase that you might want to write down and stick it in your diary at the bottom of the page. Just read it every day and just remind yourself, and eventually it will make a difference. And it's this very simple phrase, I'm sure you've heard it, is what you spot is what you've got. Yeah, what you spot is what you've got. So whatever you see in the other person is actually something that you already have within yourself. In other words, it's this business of recognition, to recognize. You would not be able to recognize their weakness, yeah, unless you had that weakness yourself. If they're always blaming, then if you're always pointing at them and condemning them for always being blameful, it's because you're a blamer too. If they're always criticizing, you wouldn't be able to recognize that criticism if you hadn't got it within yourself. So this is the idea of what you spot is what you've got. And so if I want to be free on the inside and be able to give good energy to those around me, then I have to do this work on myself first. I have to free myself from my own habits, my own weaker habits, like criticizing, like blaming, like complaining, like resisting, like getting upset at the slightest thing. So this is tool number 2. I guess the tool number 3 is to be more forgiving. Yeah. Now I don't mean that in the context of forgiveness, but if you think about it, you know, if our life is to be lived well, then it's not about living to take and possess and keep, which is what we tend to have formed the habits to do. to grab what we can. It's called the material paradigm. Get it before someone else. And so we build these habits to accumulate, to possess, to hold on, to become attached to things. And so when we walk into our relationship, and it may be your difficult relationship, maybe all your relationships, then we're walking into a relationship with that person thinking, what can they give me? What do I want from them? Yeah, and so I'm always kind of looking to get something from them, whether it's approval or acceptance or an object or more money or a better position at work. What can I get from them? Yeah, and this is like a big mistake in our consciousness, because we're not designed to acquire. We're designed to radiate as consciousness. As your body, it acquires food and light and energy, no problem. But the self, the conscious self, is designed to give its energy out. And that's why it's a little bit like a proof that you are not what you see in the mirror. Your body has to consume things, light and food, to keep it healthy, to keep it energized and vital. But when do you feel most enthusiastic and vital? When you give of yourself without wanting anything in return. When you're totally generous, kind to others. That's when you generate those feelings of satisfaction and fulfillment on the inside. It's a little bit like a paradox, is that if you want to feel fulfillment, then attempt to empty yourself. This is why you get this switch between hedonism, which is how most of us live. We live for the next pleasure, the next physical stimulation, which is pleasure. And many people live their life like that. And other people, they go, oh my God, I'm not enjoying life. Where is happiness? Where do I find it? And so they give up what they're doing. Sometimes very wealthy people, and they go and they work in a kibbutz. And or they do a lot of charity work, and so suddenly they shift from hedonism to eudanism. And eudanism is like the opposite. Instead of wanting all the time, they've discovered that their feelings of fulfillment and satisfaction comes from inside, but only when they give their energy. Only when they go into their relationships in life, and life is relationship, and find a way to be more giving of themselves. And then they say, oh God, I wish I'd done that 10 years ago. How did it take me so long to discover that? And that's why if you ask anyone who does any charity or voluntary work in any context, they'll tell you that their deepest satisfaction comes from helping others. And this is the primary opportunity of relationship. It's a relationship to help the other. So as you walk into the relationship, tool number 3, don't think, what can I get? But think, what can I give to this relationship? What can I give? And the hardest thing to do, I think, tool number 4 is to give, to lay the foundation, is to give something called respect. How do you respect someone that you've decided you don't like them? Is it still possible to give respect if you've decided that you have a dislike for that person? That's not easy. And yet this is the foundation of all human relationship. And it's the leader, in a relationship, the old saying, it takes 2 to tango. It's like a dance. And it's like we're in a tango. And in every dance, there's a leader. And so it's the leader who is able to give respect to the other person, regardless of what they've said, what they've done, what their history is, what they say they're going to do, what their intentions are. It's being able to give this respect regardless of circumstances, history, etc., etc. And so am I able to do that? Am I able to give that respect? Well, one of my favorite stories is I heard this at a retreat many, many years ago. I fell off my chair when I heard this. And it's a story of a prison in Miami, Dade County, Miami. And in America, it was one of the penitentiaries in America at the highest breakout rate, the highest levels of conflict, the highest drug abuse in all the penitentiaries in America. So a new governor came in, and the first thing he did when the new governor came in is he sent all his prison warders and staff on a customer service training course, 3 days customer service training. And then when they came back in, he said to them, now go back into the prison and treat the prisoners like they were your customers. And 2 years later, they did the study, they did the figures, and it had the lowest breakout, lowest level of drug abuse, lowest levels of conflict, all the penitentiaries in America. Reason, one word: respect. So instead of seeing those prisoners as low life level scum as they used to and treat them like scum, they just began to respect those human beings. Yeah, they began to, what is respect? And it's to affirm the dignity and the worth of the other person. A simple definition of respect: to affirm the dignity and the worth of the other human being. And so they were able to see that in their vision of the other person, and that changed the whole culture of the institution. And so the primary energy, it's a subtle energy, is to be able to give respect to the other. Yeah, and so that requires, and you can't give what you don't have. It requires a little bit of inner work to make sure I've restored my own self-respect. Which really means, do I know? Am I aware of my own value, my own dignity, my own worth as a human being, or have I learned to sabotage that? And that's what we kind of tend to do. We learn to sabotage it, and you're sabotaging it just by the awareness of your thinking. I'm not very good, and oh, that was a bad job, or I'll never succeed at that. And so it's kind of self-criticism becomes a habitual thought pattern, and that's a sign that I'm suppressing my value, my dignity as a human being. So it requires a little bit of of inner work. Number 6 is the killer of all relationships, especially romantic relationships. I sometimes talk about the myth of romantic love. And romantic love dies very quickly. It's not even love, because most romances are based on give me. There's maybe a very short period where, oh, it's wonderful, it's heaven, it's paradise, I love to be with you, I love you so much. And so it's like it's open and unconditional and free. But then suddenly what creeps into the interaction, especially over a period of time, creeps in just very, very quietly in our minds, maybe not so quietly for some people. And it's the seed of the downfall of the relationship. And it's the first moment that an expectation of the other is born in my mind. As soon as you expect something from someone, you are actually sabotaging the relationship. That love is going to disappear. True love, authentic love, because love has no expectations. True love, authentic love, unconditional, which is what love is. It's unconditional. It has no expectations. In other words, there's been a realization: you and what you do and what you say don't make me happy. I make me happy. One of my favorite cartoons is the man and wife talking to each other. So they're meeting, and there's a bubble above each one of their heads, and each one of them is having the same thought bubble. And the same thought is, you are in my life to make me happy. So they both expect the other to make them happy. And that is a formula for a very unhappy relationship. That's why the lawyers are having such a good time, I think. I hope there's no lawyers listening, but you know the story. So can I go into the relationship free of expectation? And if I am, it's not right or wrong or good or bad. It's not a question of, oh my God, I got this expectation, I'm terrible at relationships. It's not about that. It's about being aware. No, wait a minute, I want some approval here, or I'm wanting them to accept me. Every day I want that acceptance. And when I don't get it, I don't feel comfortable in myself. So that means, wait a minute, that means I'm dependent on them. And any dependency in any relationship is not going to be good for the relationship. It's going to make the relationship not work very well. Eventually, you might get away from it. Or one, there might be codependency. I'm dependent on you, and you're dependent on me. So let's kind of meet in the middle somewhere. That will last for a certain amount of time. But eventually, when the expectation is not met, when what you're dependent on is not forthcoming from the other person, there will be, eventually, it might take a little bit of building, and there will be but you don't give me time, you don't give me your attention, you don't respect me, you don't, something about you that doesn't, you've changed, you're different. What's the matter with you? And so we start having these thoughts. Maybe we need to have a little time apart, and we can go different ways for a little while, or whatever. And so we start to drift in the relationship, or maybe that person becomes very difficult because they're just so stubborn. They won't even talk about it. They'll stay closed. So this is the idea of expectation. Number 7 is to do with how you get out of a corner. So if you feel cornered, if you feel trapped in a relationship, and you kind of, maybe you made a mistake in the past, you made a commitment in the past, and you want to break free of that commitment. It's not about rejecting or resisting, because then you sabotage that relationship. If it's time to go separate, when sometimes in relationships it's time to go our separate ways. Yeah, and so it's not that we have to be like this forever, especially if it's a partnership or some kind of couple. It's like sometimes people just need to grow in different directions after a while, after a period of time. And so what often happens is that one person starts rejecting or resisting the other. And they start to exaggerate their blame for the other as a way of trying to get out of the relationship. So it's this is not bad or not wrong. It's not right. It's not good. It's just the way it's kind of evolved. But now, if I use my wisdom a little bit more, then I might realize that that's not the right way to go in different directions. It's not the way that's going to leave each party with a good feeling for the other. And that's how I want to leave the relationship, with a good feeling for the other. And so you do that by serving your way. Yeah. In other words, use some form of, how do I serve them? How do I take care of them? How do I listen to my sensitivities to feel what would be best for them in this particular situation, these particular circumstances? So you don't reject, you don't resist, you don't, oh, I can't stand that person, but how can I serve my way out? It's connected to giving. It's a little bit more specific. And so that as you serve them, you leave them with a good feeling about you. And it's quite important, really. It's a little bit subtle for many people, is that we're all kind of connected at this higher level, this level of a more subtle consciousness. We all have levels of subtlety in the energy of our consciousness. Right now we're trapped in form, and so when I believe I am just this form, then my energy is kind of dense and quite heavy, because I'm trapped in this finite thing. But as you raise your consciousness, as you become more self-aware, then you'll begin to notice the more subtle feelings that you have, more subtle intentions that you have. And so there's a point when you realize that we're all kind of connected at this higher level. Not down here, we're in separate bodies down here, but here at this level, this higher level of consciousness, we're all kind of connected. And so that's why sometimes you pick up some people's thoughts, and you pick up what they're feeling quite strongly. Usually someone is quite close to you, someone in your family maybe, and you can, it's as if you can sense what they're going through, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. So we're kind of connected at this level. So if you want to find a way to create some distance in a relationship, remember that when you do that, if you move away in any way with that intention, and you don't make sure you leave them with the right feeling about you, that will keep coming at you. It'll keep pulling you back. That energy, that vibration, they'll always be, I don't like him. I don't know what he did. No, I didn't like what he did. And I don't like how he did it. And I'm very upset. I'm really angry on the inside. So although they are responsible, for those thoughts and feelings, although you're, in a sense, you're not responsible, although they're responsible, you can help them by serving them. So that you leave them with a good feeling about you. And then you're freer. There's a less of a pull on your consciousness. It's quite subtle. But I'm sure you have someone in your life who occurs in your mind quite frequently, and it's as if you have unfinished business with that person. and they keep pulling you at that more subtle level. You don't know why, and it's because there's something that you could do which would be useful to them, which would serve them, and that would free you much more in that relationship. I think number 8 is this idea of responsibility, is to accept. Is this shift from resistance to the acceptance? So resistance of others, which means you're resisting taking responsibility for what you're creating, how you feel inside. To accepting, I accept that I am the creator of all my thoughts, all my feelings at every moment, in every situation. I can't make anyone else move into that space of acceptance. All I can do is see it, realize it, and live it for myself. In other words, an aspect of that is stop trying to control the other. In other words, you might be thinking right now, I wish so-and-so was listening to this. Because they might learn something. They might change if they listen to this. And so that means you're trying to fix, you're trying to control them, because you want them to get the idea so that they'll change and you'll be okay. That means you're avoiding responsibility for yourself. You're still projecting onto them. So this idea of this shift from resistance, notice whenever you're resisting someone, to accepting them just as they are, not trying to fix, control, and as you accept them, you accept your responsibility for yourself. It's kind of not so easy, but it's certainly a tool for the toolbox that may be useful in some relationships. Number 9 is to understand. This very simple principle is that if seek to understand the other before you try to be understood. In other words, do a lot more listening than telling, said he, doing a lot of telling. So this idea of listening, what's the intention? It's to understand the other. Now, what am I understanding? Am I understanding their story? Am I understanding their feelings? Am I understanding the meaning, the significance of the experience they just had? And so I'm seeking to understand at different levels. And of course, the deepest level is the meaning, their sense of what occurred within their story, what it means to them. So I can listen to their words, understand what they're saying. Oh, sure, that's okay. That's not difficult. To understand how they feel is a little bit more. That means I need to understand how I feel and what makes me feel certain ways. In other words, to understand myself is to be able to understand others more deeply. And so I seek to understand before I seek to be understood. And again, that sounds easy, but it's also easy to be triggered into a reaction. My opinion is, and I'm right, and this is what happened to me. Oh, I've heard that story before. I know what you need to do. And so I'm not listening so much as wanting to tell my side. And so that does not make for a good exchange in the relationship. The other person's just thinking, oh God, this person keeps interrupting, and they keep trying to assert their rightness and my wrongness, etc. So the relationship is not being built on a solid foundation. So this understanding, wanting to understand the other person, means I ask a lot of questions. It means I'm demonstrating that I value that person, what they're saying. I value them as a human being, and I'm respecting, what they have to share. Yeah. And then the final one, the 10th one, is happens in the workplace, when the relationship is a bit more formal, maybe parent child, so certainly manager, worker, or leader, leader, etc. And that's when there's a fear of authority. Yeah. And so when we're in relationship with a person in a position of authority, the mistake is to have a relationship with the position and not the person. Yeah. And so this happens for a lot of people because they've been brought up by very authoritarian attitudes, perhaps from parents who said, you'll do this, you'll do that, then you do this, then you do that. And so that they've lived with this authority figure, which has triggered their fears, but they've become accustomed to those fears over a period of time. Young life is years and years and years. And so then they go to work, and then the manager becomes the parent, the person in the position, the authority, becomes the one who's able to trigger my apprehension, my fear, my closeness, if you like. So if you find that you have a difficult relationship with people in authority, try relating to the human being. Remember, you're having a relationship with a human being first, not a position, not an authority. They're just a human being. They eat, they sleep, they have families, they have brothers and fathers and mothers, they go to the toilet or whatever. They're just human beings. And so it might require I shift my vision, be more aware of what I'm doing in my head, and shift my vision of that person. So I don't see them as a position, I see them as a human being. I start to interact in that way. That may require a little bit of experimentation. You may make some mistakes, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. But what you're doing is you're shifting away from, oh my God, I better do what I'm told, to, hey, let's have a chat. Let's talk about things. I'd like to understand you to a greater degree, and I'd like you to understand me to a greater degree. And so it's this idea of shifting from relating to the position, don't relate to the position, but have a relationship with the person, It's good. So these are 10 tools in the box, if you like, and every tool is appropriate to every relationship, but it may be that your difficult relationship, if you've identified it in your mind, there's one or two of those ideas, those tools, which are, yes, that's what I need to do here. Yes, that's what I want to start with or experiment with to begin with. And then just see how you go and see if something in there is useful for you. It's very personal. All I've done is kind of drawn a map, in a sense, of what's required for a relationship, which is not difficult, but you have to draw your own. Each of us has to draw our own map from our own experience, from our own context, our own relationships, and that'll be influenced by many things, our upbringing, our culture, our stories. It'll be influenced by many things. And so if we use those tools, we will use them in different ways, and that's just fine. There's no one right way, but it's the intention to improve the relationship, which makes me curious. Now, what will work? What's going to help in smoothing or healing or freeing the conflict, freeing the relationship from conflict, etc. Maybe one final thought is, that I use this word conflict, and we're living in a world now where we've never seen so much conflict in relationships, whether it's international or corporate conflicts or personal conflicts. It's certainly on the increase. There's more divisions, more separation. There's more we're right, you're wrong than ever before. So it's necessary to kind of understand why that is. And if you get to the very heart of any conflict, then you'll notice it's really, and this is true for all conflicts, and that little bit of insight to see it, it's really two sides, and they both have an attachment to different beliefs. Yeah, and so it's this idea of attachment and this idea of belief. This is one of the deepest levels of attachment, is the belief either that I've learned, assimilated, grown up with, that's come to me through my culture, and so I've created my version of that belief. And I've kind of mentioned some of them already, but it's this idea that our beliefs are different from your beliefs. We're right and you're wrong. Yeah, and so we're holding on. And so we're prepared to become violent. We're prepared to go to war to prove that we're more right than you. And that's what you're watching in the world today. And this is a very unenlightened state of being. Yeah, it's an unaware state of being, because each side is not aware. It's just their attachment to their beliefs that is causing them to dislike and eventually be violent towards the other side or the other person or whatever. So if you want to be free of conflict, or if you want to heal any conflict, then it's necessary to let go of your belief. It's just a point of view. You know, it's just a perception, and it's going to change and shift and move as you grow, as you change your position, as you get new ideas. You're going to see more differently. I hope even after this short sharing that you kind of have a few beliefs shifting in your mind, or at least possible shifts. And so that is the only way to resolve a conflict, is when one side is prepared to let go, to detach from their belief. Yeah, but if that's easy to say, but it's tricky in the reality of the situation, because you're just determined to see it's them, they're wrong, and so it's this projection always onto them, instead of saying, well, wait a minute, what am I holding on to here? What am I arguing about? What am I arguing for? Now, it's not that belief is right or wrong. You know, belief. The truth about belief is in the word belief. The being is lying to itself. If you spell belief, B, lie, L-I-E-F, the being is lying to itself. It's not that the content of any belief is right or wrong, but it's the fact that I'm trying to hold on to it. And I may have held it all my life. And I've always believed this. And so it's like I've closed myself around this idea, because that's what a belief is. It's just an idea or a concept. And so I'm trying to make myself static around this belief. And that's to go against the natural state of consciousness. The natural state of consciousness is not to be static and closed around something. It's to be open and fluid and dynamic. Yeah, that's my natural state. That's when I feel most comfortable, when I'm open and fluid and dynamic. Yeah, and so that's why belief is not the truth. The truth can't be captured in words. I can't speak the truth, because words are form. They're limited. They're conceptual. They're limited content. Truth is formless. It's a state of consciousness. It's prior to thoughts, prior to the formulation of concepts. Yeah, trueness, your trueness, not your truth, your trueness, your true state of being is essentially what exists at the core of our being at all times. But we get so trapped and stuck and static around an idea or belief. I've always believed this. And we do that. It's like trying to hold on to a fence post. You know, when you were a kid and the wind started blowing, you had to hold onto the tree or hold onto the fence post, because that gave you support. So that's what we do with our beliefs. We take support from our beliefs. Yeah. Not realizing that when you believe something, it also means you're saying, I don't know something. Because if you knew, you wouldn't say you believe. You say, well, I know. And then you don't need to prove it. You just know. Yeah. But when you've got a belief, when you hear other people's beliefs, you see their beliefs as a threat. And then comes the conflict. Then comes the defensiveness. Then comes the even more closeness. And so some people live their entire lives like that. And they live very unrelaxed lives. Always tense, always anxious. You know, always ready to. That's why you get some people always looking for an argument. You know, they walk up to you and they go on, press my button, make my day. They want an excuse to get upset, to get angry, to get anxious, to get scared, because they're addicted to the emotion. But that's another seminar. That's for another time. It's good. So let me stop here and let me see if there's any questions. I notice on the chat page there's no questions. So that means everything's totally clear.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was so good. I think all the tools are very much necessary. What we need to do is practice them on a daily basis and see which tool we need to enhance and use more and more in our day-to-day life. But I really like what you said about listening.
Yeah.
So listening may be the greatest contribution we can bring to our relationship. Listening strengthens relationship and demonstrates attentiveness, caring, and respect. Listening is also more than just hearing. To truly listen, you must give your undivided attention and put your own agenda and needs aside. I think that's the greatest gift we can give each other, is the gift of undivided attention, or being present, if I may say.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
So shall we just take a moment and have a little meditation and all of that and let it sink in?
Yes.
Okay, so let me invite you to join me now in just a moment of quiet reflection, silent reflection, a little bit of meditation, and I'm going to sort of share a few thoughts as always, and then you can come with me if you like. If you don't want to, that's also okay. But it kind of describes what I do in my meditation practice. The simplest form of meditation, the simplest definition of meditation, is this cultivation of self-awareness. And it's that self-awareness that's necessary to begin to selectively pick from the toolbox what's appropriate to do and to say in the moment. You know, the more you meditate, the more self-aware you become, the clearer you become about how to respond to the other. In other words, which one of these tools you might want to use, which you will find most effective. So that's why I meditate every day, because very gradually that clarity is restored to my awareness. So I'm going to ask you to look away from the screen and just rest your eyes somewhere. And the reason I do that is that if you look at the screen, then you're always sort of watching the image and you get lost in the image. And so the movement, and you start judging and naming and labeling. You want to go beyond all that in your meditation. So if you want to rest your eyes, and you can close your eyes if you want, somewhere in the room, might be well away from the screen, it might just be next to your screen on your desk, wherever you have your computer. And then just step number one is just to relax your body in the chair. Just find a position that you're relaxed in, a formal position, not kind of lazy on your chair, but sitting according to the shape of your chair. And then just scan your body with your awareness and see if you can find any tension or tightness in your body. And if you do, then just consciously relax that part of your body. So your whole body is kind of relaxed in the shape of the chair. Yeah, and then bring your awareness to yourself and just take a moment and see if you can be aware of yourself being aware. And then once again, just shift your awareness to your breath and just watch your breath. Don't need to force it, just watch it. The in and the out, the full cycle. Just observe your breathing, the rising and falling of your chest. Don't force, just watch. Just watch. As you do, you'll become even more relaxed and yet very aware. So then bring your awareness to your mind. And on the screen of your mind, just create one simple thought. I am a being of peace. And just let that thought move across your mind, but very slowly. I am a being of peace. And then let that thought dissolve into the background, fade away, and notice what remains. There's a feeling of peace, of calm, of quiet. The mind is very quiet now, silent. And there's a stillness here at the heart of my being. Silent and still. Silent and still. And then bring your awareness back to the room around you. But bring that stillness with you. Bring that peace with you. So as you listen through these ears, hear from that stillness. As you look through these eyes, see from that stillness. And when you speak new words, new ideas to whoever is around you, speak from that stillness. And as you do, know you bring the greatest gift to that relationship. The gift of peace. The gift of your stillness. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, that was nice. So still and so peaceful. We have a comment here, not a question actually.
Mm-hmm.
The comment is, relationships are also partnership. It might sound a little cold, but it's a lot like a business deal. What would you have to say?
Well, initially I'd say that that's the great mistake of relationships, turning them into a business deal, an exchange, a transaction. That means that that I'm going into the relationship wanting something from the other, expecting something from the other. That means I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to generate the emotion of sadness and disappointment, and then I'm going to blame the other for how I feel. So I'll be avoiding self-responsibility. So that's what happens in many relationships. It's when we make love conditional. That's where love ceases to be love. It becomes a business. It becomes a transaction. And then it's not really love. It's conditional. So don't do that if you can not do it. But yes, I understand that relationships become like that. They do. It becomes like a transaction, like a business, like an exchange. It's not a good idea.
The next one is, a good relationship comes together when people use a mix of emotion and logic.
Yes. Yes and no. If you really want to understand emotion, and it really depends on what you mean by emotion, and I think we probably have a different meaning. For me, love is not an emotion. It's a natural state of being. It's a natural state of being. And when you're in that natural state, then you feel that natural state. So all emotion is a disturbance in your consciousness. All emotion comes from attachment. That's why, whenever you get angry, it's not energizing, it's tiring. Whenever you get angry, you can't think clearly. Frustration, resentment, are just early forms of anger. Whenever you're scared, you can't make good decisions. You lose your creativity. Whenever you're sad and down, whenever you depress yourself, depression, then my vitality, my enthusiasm disappears. So for me, it's not many people really understand emotion, but it requires a little bit of self-awareness and understanding of how all emotion, all disturbances in your consciousness, that's where disturbance begins, not in the body, in your consciousness, begins with an attachment to something or someone, somewhere, some idea, some belief. So that attachment always leads to some kind of suffering, and that suffering is emotional. So when you're in a loving state, you're not suffering. You're giving, you're caring, you're being kind, you're being generous, you're being compassionate. These are not emotions. These are natural feelings, natural radiant energies from you, from the being that you are. So it's necessary to untangle these two. Otherwise, we just talk to each other about emotions and we mean different things. What do you mean by emotion? What do I mean by emotion? That depends on our understanding of what's going on in our consciousness. And so sometimes people talk about emotion. Well, love's just another emotion, and anger is just another emotion. So there's no difference between anger and fear and love and so on. Yeah, they're natural. They're human nature. I don't have to do anything about it because they're natural. And so we give ourselves a great excuse to not understand the emotions that we feel. And then when nothing changes, and we just carry on. It's like a de facto lazy way of not doing my own inner work or raising my own inner awareness, really. But hey, that's another seminar. It's another workshop. Yeah.
We have the last one is,
Okay.
Relationship is but the transactional analysis of ego levels between two persons. Isn't the conflict of egos a natural outcome of the emotional transaction between two persons? Human beings are no robots for a programmed behavior, isn't it? Can you please comment on this?
I'm not sure I understand the question. There's about 3 questions in there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, it requires understanding of whatever you get attached to. Whatever you get attached to, it's not physical attachment, it's attachment in your mind. That understanding requires, I'm not my mind. When you watch a movie, you get lost in the story. You're aware of the cinema at first, but then the movie starts, you get lost in the story, you get lost in the character. So if the character loses something and starts crying, you start crying. Oh my God. And so it's not me that's lost anything, it's the character in the movie. It's not even real, it's a movie. And so that means that I'm lost in the movie. Now, the real movie is not playing out on the screen, it's playing out in my mind. So the story is running across my mind. I bring the movie in and I run the story. And so that's why after the movie, I go with coffee for a friend and we talk about the movie. And they say, well, I didn't see that. And you say, well, I didn't see that. Were we watching the same movie? Yes, we were, but we had different versions of it because we create at every moment, we're creating different versions. And what we don't notice is we lose ourselves in our version of the character of the story. And so that attachment, that's where attachment happens. That's what attachment is. When you lose your sense of self in something that you are not. Yeah. So images and ideas and beliefs, they're things in consciousness, just like objects on your desk are things in the physical world. But inside your consciousness, there's you, and then there's what's on your mind. Yeah, we lose ourselves in what's on our mind. That's what attachment is. And then we use what we lose ourselves in to build our sense of self. Yeah, if we've got lots of money in the bank out there, we've got lots of money in the bank in here, and I lose myself in, oh, I'm worth this. This is me. This is my bank. This is my bank. And so that's me creating a false sense of identity. And that's what the ego is, a false sense of identity. So that's why ego is the core of all suffering. But it requires real introspection and solitude, and it requires you challenge all the beliefs that you've learned. And that question contains many beliefs, transactional, ego, conflict, many connections. I have to untangle all that for myself to get to the truth for myself. And I can only do that when I look at my own experience. Now, what's happening when I get upset and get angry? Forget what the academics taught me at university. How am I feeling? And who's responsible for that feeling? And why am I creating that? Oh, it's because I'm attached to it. Oh, it's because I'm getting attached to this. Never mind the theories of others. See for yourself. That's why, let me finish with what I often say in talks. Please do not believe a word I say. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. See for yourself, do the inner work, raise your self-awareness. Never mind what other people are trying to tell you or what you've learned, what beliefs you've picked up. See for yourself. Yeah, it's the only way to wake up. And you've seen this term awakening now. It's big, the neon lights across the world as people wake up. Yeah, and realize, oh, I've been asleep. I've just believed blindly what everyone's told me, what the politicians have told me, what the teachers, what I just believed. And this is crazy. See for yourself. Only then do you rediscover the power that is there in the heart of your being. That's why, please do not believe a word you have just heard from me. How to nullify a talk in one line. Oh, it's great. Javine, thank you very much. And thank you for listening.
Thank you once again, Mike. It was very nice and very insightful indeed. And definitely we will need more sessions. I think most importantly on how to be an active listener.
That's a good idea for a session. Very good.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
So thank you once again. And
pleasure.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Our next session is on coming Saturday, the 24th of October at 4 p.m. Jakarta time. I have dropped my number in the chat box. Do get in touch with me so that I can forward you all the details. Until then, let us practice with all the tools that Mike has given us, and let us make our relationships better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.